All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Jenn Gotzon, and we are here for the first episode ever of Inspiring Audiences, where we're going to talk about a movie and how it relates to culture today. I am so excited because my wonderful friend, who is the creator, the director, the filmmaker, and the awesome, amazing lead actor opposite of me, Anthony Hackett, in the movie, as we're sporting our shirts, Love Different, is joining me today. And we are going to open up a conversation where you can join in, type your questions, and we're just going to have a chat about how to unify this racial divide and understand each other different so we can love better. All right, Anthony, you want to say hello to everyone?
What up? What up? What up, people? What's going on? Yeah, love different. You know what it is. That's the message and the movement we rocking with, and hopefully, God will be able to take this message of loving people different and translate it into you guys' hearts and your spirits and your minds and your families. And I'm excited about talking about some stuff. So let's get it cracking. Let's do it.
Okay, all right. So let's start by talking about the movie. So, Anthony, why did you feel it in your heart to make a story about a white girl, hello, that's me, the character I play, who that gets hired at an all African American consulting firm, hello, that's where your character Neek has to school me in 2 days about the African culture?
Yes. So, it's kind of what inspired me with that again is obviously God. Inspiration when I write, it's always inspired by God. So that's the main thing. But two, it was about talking about things that I know about and that is relevant and real. And I wanted to be able to have a story that people like myself can connect with. In the faith-based world, there's not any film like this in the faith-based world, period. But within the faith-based world, you get a lot of scripts and stories that are similar. And I wanted to kind of do something that was maybe a little different, but at the same time still relevant and real, and then add in the humor and the funny part, and hence here goes Love Different. But specifically with regard to the white versus black thing, that's just something I know about. Growing up as a black kid, you hear jokes, you make jokes, about the culture and about the differences, listening to some of your favorite comedians. Those are just some of the things that you hear. So to be able to then hear those things and then experience them in real life scenarios and situations, I thought it would be cool to bring it to life on screen. So that's kind of what happened there.
Oh my gosh. Like I know for me, when you sent me the script to play Lindsay, like any script, why do we actors do what we do? Well, sometimes people just do it to get a paycheck. I don't think either one of us. But it's for me is to find material that can not only entertain someone, but can make an impact and an inspiration in their soul to want to be a better person. And when I was reading the script you wrote, that I actually personally believe God used your hands to create, because you captured the heart and the essence of the white population to a T. Because when I read it, every single situation, I don't even think there's one scene in that movie when I read that I actually knew about. So Lindsay's reactions that you wrote were genuinely my reactions. And I thought that was really fascinating. And that's what actually opened my eyes to really how different we are, worlds apart from one another, even though we live here in America right next to each other. I had no idea, honestly, that the color of our skin really truly has created a difference in the way that we experience life. I thought that was years ago of what we came from. I didn't realize to the culture of what's happening today. Unfortunately, what happened a week ago and what's going on in the climate of America right now, this movie is so relevant, and which I believe is why you and I are excited to be a part of a story like this and open this conversation and get it out there.
Absolutely.
Anthony, how did you come up with the way that Lindsay experiences life? And like, what is like one of the examples in the movie, and how did you create that situation?
So, I guess for any of the viewers who aren't too familiar with the story, I know we briefly explained it. Sorry, I know we briefly explained it, but again, it's just about a white woman who gets a job at an all-black consulting firm, and in order to keep her job, she has to learn the black culture within 2 days. And so that concept, like, I'm not a white woman, clearly. So, to be able to kind of tap into how a white woman might respond or react to certain situations was really just based on not just experience, but the realistic reaction of a typical white woman with regard to black culture. And that's just from my experience with women, like white women. That's what happens. It's not like everything that's in this movie is based off of real life, real events. Of course, some of the things may be exaggerated for humor's sake, but everything is really based off of real stuff. So to be able to capture those genuine moments, and which is I'm gonna throw it back at you, Jen, because it was cool to be able to capture those moments on paper, right? And have some of those situations where a white person is trying to understand what an HBCU is, for example. That's one of the issues that come up in HBCU. And as we've learned recently, a lot of white people don't have no idea what an HBCU is. But that was a joke written in. But there are some things that happened in the script that was not written in the script. It happened organically between you and I and the rest of the people on set. For example, let me give you one thing, and then let me tell the people about one little quick story, and then I want you, Jen, to piggyback on that and talk more about that. But so this was in the grocery store scene, right? We were in the grocery store scene, and we was hungry. It was time to go eat, right? So it was time to go eat. Everybody, we cut. We on break, and we all sitting down. We munching, right? Getting hungry. And then I was like, oh man, I'm about to get the itis up in this piece. And then Jen looked at me. She was like, well, she looked around. She was like, what's the itis? I was like, what's the itis? What do you mean? What's the itis? You don't know what the itis is? So that was such a funny, organic, real moment that we actually put that in the story in one of the scenes, in the restaurant scene. And it comes out because obviously within our culture, we know what the itis is. Black people, we get together, we eat, and the itis is simply means, after you finish eating, you ready to go to sleep. You get tired. So that's basically what it means. But for Jen to hear that and experience it in real life, and then us to be able to capture that and then throw it in the movie was dynamic. And I want to ask you, Jen, like some of the things that you learned on set, or just some of the experiences that you had on set with regard to the black people, the black culture itself. Please tell us more about that. Tell us more about what you've learned, or even what your thoughts were about working with me and as a black man and other people, and learning about the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. First on the itis, yeah, that was hilarious. And for those who are watching, nobody told me what the itis was until they added it into the script when our characters were eating at a restaurant. And then at the end, Anthony goes, oh, let's get up. I'm about to get the itis on. And I'm like, and you have to watch the movie to see what my response was, because I had no idea.
Yeah.
Note to every white friend of mine who I have asked if they know what the itis is, we have all resorted to, is it some inflammation of the skin? Is it inflammation and something dealing with arthritis? Because it's an itis, arthritis. No white person has ever known that. And all of my friends, I don't know if anyone knows what oh my gosh, what's the abbreviation? The UHCU.
HBCU.
Yes. HBCU, which is a historical black college and university. Today we were on TBN, Trinity Broadcast Network, with Pastor Isaac, who he's the talk show host for Praise the Lord. And we got
Mm-hmm.
into the conversation about this. We showed the movie trailer of Love Different. And in the trailer, it talks about grew up in the hood. I went to an HBCU. And my character says, what's an HBCU? And pause, our host leans over and he goes, what's an HBCU? And
Oh, it was hilarious, man. Like we had a genuine Love Different moment on the set of TBN with the host, because he had no, a white guy, of course, had no idea what a HBCU was. I was like, oh, this is so, but it was a good connection because it was a connection with Jenn, because she also at that moment when she first started had no idea what it was too. Like a cool moment of them connecting on that particular issue, but it was hilarious. I thought it was funny.
it was not only hilarious, it opened up a real quick common bond between, it opened up that bond between Isaac and me, which I think for anybody watching, you could see that us white people really are out in the dark, not even realizing it. And I think that's what's so fascinating about the culture right now, is that if we as white people don't understand that there is a lot of difference just because of our ignorance, and there's nothing, it's just we need to be aware. Like, Anthony, can I talk to them about the milk story?
Sure.
So after church on Sunday, this fire came on my heart to be able to open a conversation. And the conversation being is, why do we fear each other? What causes us to feel unsafe when we're around another race? That puts up these boundaries, that puts up this chip on the shoulder, that puts up this, basically like this boundary that's pushing off, get out of my space, which then people are reacting to, saying, all right, I'll get out of your space. And then it creates another negative memory on something that you might see on television, which starts to solidify a judgment towards someone that doesn't really exist. So we got into a conversation, and how Anthony was saying that he never can go to a store to buy a carton of milk without having to do a few things. And as a white person, I could just put on a bunch of scrubby clothing, walk across the street, buy some milk, and not be an issue. But Anthony, what is it that you have to go through for you to feel comfortable and safe and not judged?
Say that again. What is it? What
do you, like for me as a white person, if I want to go get a carton of milk or buy some juice, I could throw on basically my pajamas, something scrubby, walk across the street, buy the milk, pay, and leave. And I don't have any issue whatsoever. I don't have any subconscious thought of anything except for, can I find a parking spot?
Right.
And that's it. So that's me being white. What about you?
For me, this is for a lot of black men. We have this subconscious thought that, like if we go into a store, if we're going to a convenience store, or we're going to wherever to go get something, it's a subconscious thought or even a conscious thought to make sure that you are as non-threatening as possible, and or as looking like you're going to steal something or anything like that. So for example, if I'm going in the store, I'm literally every single time I go to a store, I always make sure that my hands are visible. I make sure that, if I got a hood on, I take my hood off. I make sure that, I'm in plain sight, because I don't want to give any impression that I could be in there for anything other than just getting some milk. And it's not that I have to do that, because I don't have to do that. It's not that like, all right, I need to do this because I'm scared, you know what I'm saying? Or because someone could think something. I don't have to do it. It's just literally a subconscious thought, because it's I guess how my mind is trained to make sure that I am not threatening and not giving the appearance of being a thug or a thief or anything like that. So I don't want to be stopped. I've been stopped before numerous times in a store before I exited the store, literally talking to me, asking me if I've have anything in my pockets. Have you, like, it's happened, I don't know how many times, more than like 3 times. I've been stopped in the store before I step out the store, and they're simply just asking, hey, what's in your pockets? And this was younger. It hasn't really been like in my adulthood, per se, but it's happened, and that stays with you, especially as a young person. It stays with you.
Who are the people who stopped and asked you? Like, what was the race?
I don't even remember the race. I just know they were like managers of the store. I don't remember the race. It was like high school. But
Okay.
my this too, my phone is battery's about to die, so I'm about to try to switch this battery out so I don't lose you.
Okay. So I guess those are some things. Like, I live in New York City, and we were discussing, like, what is it that we fear, so we can stop this, to be able to better understand each other, and even opening that conversation to, one, realize that we have cultural differences, and that we should perceive people almost as if we are blind. And if we're blind and you can't see, how are you making judgments on an individual? You judge that individual based on how their behavior is to you, or the energy that they're giving off to you. So if someone's in a really angry, upset, get out of my zone type of sphere, you're going to react to that. To be safe, you're going to step away from it. At least as a woman, that's what goes through my mind. If we were blind and you couldn't tell what color or genetic an individual was, you're just responding based on attitude. And I think that's something that I would love for everyone to recognize. One, when you're in a crowd or you pass someone of a different race, and subconsciously you may feel hatred, judgment, fear, feeling like you need to protect yourself. At least white people, that's what something we have to do. We feel like we have to protect ourselves. Where did that start? In the movie Love Different, we have this hilarious scene where we go to black school to learn about black people that's taught by Kevin on stage. And there is a scene where you see a black man walking by a white woman, and she grabs her purse. And in the scene, he shows her, no, you open your body, don't be frightened, and wave instead. And everyone in the class applauds, because that's what us white people subconsciously do. And I'll never forget this. I was 15 years old on a cruise in Alaska, and in an elevator came a black girl. Yes.
Keep my phone. It's on 1%. I'm about to crash on you. Oh no. But I have to go plug my phone into a different cord. So I'm gonna try to stay with you.
All right. Well,
as I do this. But if it goes out, just reconnect with me.
I think you have to click on the link, and then you'll be in.
Click on the link. Okay.
Cool. Alrighty. As Anthony is getting his phone set up, I'm going to continue with the story. So I was in this elevator, and the scene that we reenacted in the movie Love Different aspect, I remember living that moment in Alaska on a cruise. And I always got upset at myself, going, who and where, what taught me to fear that I'm going to get mugged if I have a purse? And that is what started inside of me an injustice, going, this is unacceptable, where this is coming from. And so throughout high school, I was very, very active about One World, One People. One of my friends at school was, in fact, our own high school. And Jasper, he ran for president. And so he and I became best friends. And it was because internally I was like, I am unhappy with how that moment somehow resulted in me, and I don't want it to happen ever again. So I'm going to choose to love people intentionally, like Jesus Christ is my model. Love one another unconditionally. And then what happened through the years, my mind, I did not see color of skin or bone structure of race. I see people as one creation who's created in the image of God. And we're all unique and different, just like someone who has blonde hair or brown hair, blue eyes or hazel eyes. And so when I read the script, Love Different, I'm like, what? You've got to be kidding me. This is really literally in the movie. They asked I can't sing it all. Oh Lord, how. And then I had to finish the song. And I'm like, I grew up in church. I love church. I have no idea how to finish a song. I never heard of it. Well, we were on TBN today, and Isaac, our host, and who was moderating, didn't know how the end of the song goes. The only person in the room who knew how that song went was another black gentleman who was running. Once we got done filming, I know that song. How do white people not or singer? And then another thing is that another question was, for us white people, okay, in this situation, if you see a situation happening on the street, there's a fight, there's a lot of anger going on, you hear a lot of noise, what do you do? Do you A, go investigate, kind of walk towards it, or do you B, run the other direction? So that is something else that I learned is very different about black and white. Every white person I know, we investigate. Where did we learn that? I have no idea of our deal. Every black person I've spoken to runs. And it clearly makes sense, is because if there's danger, why are we going towards it? We should run from it. It's another cultural difference. I think the biggest thing that blew my mind, because then it brought me back to how God created the world, and where did he create the human condition across the world? Why are white people mostly, we were born and created in Europe, and then obviously we came to America. How comes people up in Alaska, Eskimos, have more hair on their body? Why do African Americans were born and originated out of Africa have dark skin and have thicker hair? As Americans, our hair is longer. Not Americans, as white people, our hair is longer, and we have hair. How do Asians have no hair on their body and have light skin and do not sweat? And this concept came to my mind when we filmed Love Different, and we did this scene where you see an incident happening and all the black people are running one way and the white people are walking intentionally to figure it out. Well, it was a hot summer day. It was 3 p.m. It was really hot out. And we had maybe about 12 people on the cast that were black that were running. It wasn't just running like 5 feet. They were running. And we reset and we did that 3 times. As they ran down and then walked back under the hot sun, I brought water bottles out to give water out. Not one person took any water. And I'm like, okay. Second time, vroom, and they come back. Now this time it's close to, maybe I would say, like a half of a mile that has been run. I come back, they would come back, and I have water bottles to give out. And again, all the extras that are the cast members that are running are all black. No one took any water. The third time, everyone runs, comes, takes water, except for one girl who is our makeup artist. And I'm like, how are you not thirsty? And we got inside, and there's our makeup artist was doing makeup. We got into this conversation. She goes, Jen, I just took water because I felt bad for you. Every time you came, and I felt bad, so I finally took one. And I'm like, how were you not thirsty? And that's where I learned that the physical genetics of the body makeup is so different with stain, heat, and hydration at different levels. Because the white person, you run down, coming back, every person, I would say a large percentage of people would be reaching for water, to drink some water. And I just was off the chains, blown away by that revelation. Which then got me fascinated, going, how and why did God allow for the migration of human beings end up in slavery? And how did that happen into our world? And how was it that people thought that that was okay to do? And then that made me very upset and angry that we lived in a culture that happened. And thank God that that's the situation anymore. And that's been, a good handful of decades ago. And Anthony and I, we were talking on the subway after filming on TBN today, that there's a generational pain of the sins of the father, or the pains of the father that get passed down, that we know in the Bible, that is coming up, that we as white people don't experience. In the Black population, ancestors that went through slavery, you have your ancestors that went through I'm sorry, I had a call that came in, just that went through slavery. And so you're dealing with the pain from past. Now, someone who I would say like Anthony's age, who's in his 30s, he didn't grow up in the day and age of slavery, so he hasn't personally physically experienced that. I know I haven't experienced growing up having, as a white person, being on a plantation where you have the historical climate that happened years ago where you have slaves. So I don't understand how that is. And in fact, it makes me so angry and a human being would do that to another human being. I think it's completely unjust. And it's wrong. So I think we experience the residuals of our historical climate. And if that residual does not get discussed and talked about openly, occurred last week with the shootings, unfortunately, is with the police force, who are trying, when there are good police officers, and I know there's good police officers out there, just like there's bad police officers out there, just like there's good white people out there, just like there's bad white people out there, just like there's good black people out there, like there's bad black people. There is good and there's evil in this world, but that does not generalize an individual over a stereotypical class. And so when that happened last week with the hate that populated an organizational move across the country, where today, Friday, July 14th, people are having a march of hatred. Not a march against hatred. No, it's a hate march. And there's a mourning in all the cities, in the major cities here in America, about this march. People are marching because hatred in their heart of having judgment and racism. And it's just so sad to me that we live in a fabric right now with that as our moral fiber here in America. And this movie, Love Different, when we filmed a year ago, God, who was our executive producer on this movie, he knew that this movie would come out this year. And he knew that this movie, Love Different, actually creates an entertainment resource for people to open up the conversation of why white people, unfortunately, are very ignorant about the culture that is not their skin color. And instead, we have a fear that comes up subconscious in us when we're out in a group of people that we don't know, that will also come in, and we fear like there may be danger, and therefore we put protection up against ourselves, which then gives off an essence that another individual will read as someone's being racist. And therefore they're responding to that, and we're responding to them, and it becomes a back and forth response system of people responding opposite of each other's reaction to one another. So I think, how do we create a bridge? One, I would say seriously, not just because, not because I'm promoting a movie, that's not it. I would literally say seriously, if you're really interested, if you're white and you're like, really, we're really not that different, or I really don't know what the itis is, or if someone gets excited, like, hey, I don't know what that is, or I don't know what an EBT card is, or I don't know what an HBCU is. These certain things that are common knowledge in the African American race. If we don't know what that is, I really encourage you, just take a look. Love Different. Love differentthemovie.com, because it'll open your eyes. And once we have an awareness, I think the next step is to, let's look at a good role model of what love represents. Jesus Christ. He's a really great role model to me on how to love people. Jesus, he tells us that we are to love one another like he loved us, and he loved mankind so much that he came and he set his life aside, and he actually physically died. He died. He took nails into his hands, into his feet, and he, so that mankind would have eternal life. That's how much he loved us. He walked day by day in his life, finding ways to connect to people of the outcast, of the minorities. He hooked up with fishermen of that day and age. You know, those people would probably represent, you know, folks that are, you know, in that day and age, and currently in this day and age of people who are fishermen, you know, a lot of people who are drinking, who are, you know, living off the boat. He hooked up with tax collectors back then. Those are bad people. Those were the thieves. Those would represent the people who would walk into a store, and because maybe they didn't have money this day, would steal something, or because they had so much hatred in their heart, they would steal something. That's who Jesus would be hanging out. So obviously that doesn't relate to race. That relates more to an ethical situation. But Jesus represents how we are to love. And as we decide to love someone else. And I would say that should be the biggest thing, is when we go out today or tomorrow and you encounter someone of a different race. So if you're Black watching this and you notice, how do you feel when you walk around? Do you feel a subconscious, like Anthony was talking about earlier, like he's constantly concerned of like a judgment? Do you feel that? And then ask yourself, is that individual that you're seeing projecting that to you? Or is it you responding to an experience that you remember having or hearing your family talk about, or something you see in movies? And that's the same question for all races, but specifically the white and Black conversation. For white people, I know when I'm in a subway car in New York, if I walk into a subway car that is all Black men that are got super muscles, and I'm the white girl with blonde hair, if I have a choice to get out of a subway car, internally, my fear, danger radar goes up in me. And the reason why is because I don't feel like I could defend myself if something bad would go down. Now, if I walk into a subway car with all white men I don't know if I would feel that. So I asked Anthony, and we talked about this, why does internally, that's the instinct. And it broke my heart to realize it's because everything we see in movies, if you see a gang member in movies, what do they look like? What is their race? What is their physical body structure? So we're responding off of what we're seeing in movies that a lot of times depict some situations in life, but that's not every situation. Somehow there's a call coming in on this broadcast, and I do not know how to answer it. Okay. All right. I'm going to see if I can bring Anthony in on this broadcast, and we have lost our connection with him. His phone died, which is okay because phones do that. And this is my first broadcast on this. Oh, fabulous, wonderful thing. And so, Anthony, I think we got you back in, buddy.
I'm back. Oh, my goodness. I'm so sorry, man. I ran all over the place trying to get a different charger. This one is working. My phone is still on 1%, but the charge is holding, so I think we should be good.
Hallelujah. Just got done talking. I just got very transparent and real. And I was talking about why do people come up with the concept of fearing each other subconsciously? It's like it's our instinct. And I gave the example of in New York, and I get in a subs full of all Black men that are really built. I would feel unsafe and that I would need to leave and go into another car. And I said, why does that come in my radar? And it's because of movies showing that most gangs that do bad things represent that physical quality, the big muscles, and most of the gangs represent a lot of minorities all blended together. So I wanted to throw that question back to you. When you get into, let's just say, a room that has all white people, what goes on in your subconscious being?
Interesting question. I've never had that question before. And when I'm in a room of all white people, what comes to my subconscious? I gotta be honest, probably nothing. I guess it may depend on what that situation is or what that room is like. I mean, just generally speaking, nothing really would come into my mind. However, if it was maybe like, if I don't know, I guess there will be particular situations where something may pop into my head. But I really don't have any thoughts on if there's a bunch of white people in a room, what comes to mind. However, with that being said,
Really have any? The phone just died.
Oh, can you hear me though?
So Anthony, why do you think, because a lot of white people, friends of mine that I've talked about, and this is mostly women, this hasn't been the white men I've spoken to. Why do you think a white woman experiences fear when they're in an all-black crowd, mostly of men? I think he lost connection. If you're listening right now, I would love for you to answer that as well. Because ideally, I want to get to the underlying level so we can learn to overcome that. Because it shouldn't exist. We should only be making decisions based on people's attitudes. If they're angry and full of hate and there's danger, then that makes sense to seek safety and protection. But if you find yourself having that subconscious thought and your body's reacting and you're real into yourself, and you realize it's because of a color, then you need to analyze why and where did that start so we can make a change. Because I believe one person at a time can make a change. I am so determined that that never happens ever again. Because I believe we are one body made in the image of Christ. And I think we need to learn how to better love each other. I believe Anthony is kicked out because of the connection on his phone. This here is my first episode of Inspiring Audiences. And we're talking about how to create unity within a racial divide of specifically focusing on the Black and white culture that got spawned from our latest movies, Love Different. That has been an award-winning film that's been trending on the market as one of the top sellers. And it came out very recently. And you could get it at lovedifferentthemovie.com. It's a comedy talking about the differences. And again, my character is Lindsay, a girl from the middle of Iowa, no person in town except for white people, and she gets hired at an all-African-American consulting firm in Baltimore to realize she doesn't know anything about the culture. Realizing her heart is that she loves everybody, and she doesn't think there's any difference, which represents me. And I learned that there is such a beautiful difference. And how cool would it be to understand each other better when we're out there having fun together with everyone, that we can connect on another level. Because that, I tell you, anytime I'm hanging out with Black friends and I share things from the movie that I've discovered, we all of a sudden connect at a deeper level. There's a new awareness. And I think it's really cool. I think that's one way that we can start to bridge this. The other way is, let's use Jesus Christ as our example to love one another as Christ loves, and to be in prayer. And if you have experienced a painful memory that really came from another race, and that's what's causing your fear, I'd be able to make some time with Jesus and just envision that Jesus is with you. At least this is what I do. I envision that Jesus is with me, and I say, this is what I'm hurting about. And I imagine as if I just extend it into Jesus's hand, almost if I take a deep breath in, and almost as if I'm exhaling, breathing out that memory, that pain, and just putting it in, and seeing Jesus, knowing that he loves us so much, and that he's the forgiver of our sins, and he's the healer of mankind, that he will take that memory and he will open up the pit of hell and just throw it down to the abyss, and by his blood covering would cover over that sin, that memory, to never be experienced again. And then I breathe in his truths from the Bible to replace that experience. One thing I experienced is that we are not we're not given a spirit of fear or timidity, but of power, love, and a sound mind. When I grew up, my mom and my dad wanted to keep me very protected of my surroundings. And so instead, what occurred in my later years of life, I had a situation where I was stalked. And what occurred in me, I became very scared of being outside. And that turned into so I had to take those memories of being stalked and what that was like, and I had to extend it into Jesus, and I had to breathe in and believe that no weapon formed against me should prosper. And then I would hold on to the verse, the Lord has not given me a spirit of fear or timidity, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So I would replace in my mind's eye the spirit of fear with the truth. No, God has given me a spirit of love, power, and a sound mind. So when I experience fear, I go, no, God has made me to love. God has given me power because I'm in him, and God has given me a sound mind. And that's the truth of the gospel that God has given all of us. And so that's how I would take a wound with imagination in Jesus. Also, as an actor, it's almost an acting emotional prep reverse exercise of breathing out and breathing in on image. And I would receive the scriptures as truth to continue and to create healing. With abandonment, when I went through a very horrible situation a couple years ago and experienced abandonment, that was so strong. And then I would imagine that Jesus was right there with me, and I would take that memory, that specific word that someone said to me, or that thought or that image, I would hold it captive, and I would just exhale it into Jesus's hands for him to hold. And then I would trust that Jesus will take it from me, and then I would replace and renew that pain with truth to me, and I would see him. He goes, Jen, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. And imagine Jesus with me, that he will never leave me or forsake me. And in that, he goes before me and by me in that mood of abandonment. And so now, today, when I go out and I experience anything, I stand strong, and the Lord has commanded me to be strong and courageous. The Lord is right with me. He is before me and behind me. And I imagine as if Jesus is there with me and that I'm not alone. And that gives me the tools to strengthen in him, which then has returned, removes the fear off of me that can be perceived. And that opens up communication, better love one another. That, I think, is it in nutshell, how to bridge racial divide, how to stop the hatred, and next time when you step into a group of someone that looks different than you, ask yourself, are you frightened? Do you have a boundary up? Do you have judgment up? Do you feel a little racist even though you don't want to admit it? Do you feel fear? Do you have this chip of protection on your shoulder? Do you have this it's almost like a get out of my space type of thing? If those are things, ask yourself, is that how Jesus wants? I guarantee you it's not. He wants us to be safe and what is pure, what is lovely, what is gracious, what is a good rapport. These are things that we are to think onto. And the other human being that we're making a judgment on based on what we see or perceive, we can do is we can pray. We can pray that. We can pray and say, I'm going to be strong and courageous. I'm going to invite Jesus to be here with me. And I'm going to ask me to see through Jesus' eyes and start to experience to love one another. I'm Jenn, my episode with Inspiring Audiences, where I take a movie that I star in and I use up some real deep conversations of real human things that we deal with in our thought life, in our heart, and unfortunately that comes out in our actions and comes out in our reactions. So if you've seen this, please write a little note of something that you may have learned or something that may encourage somebody else to learn how to love each other differently. And I was really excited that we were able to have Anthony Hackett, the writer, the director, actor, the producer, the marketing guru of Love Different, to be on my first episode with me. He literally just drove back from New York City because earlier today we were in TBN on the talk show, praise the Lord, and he just was, so we went on his phone to connect in, and his phone died.